Welcome today to Mentor Time. This is a topic I'm very excited about. I got some questions. I don't have all the answers, but I do have enough data, evidence-based data, things we've talked about in our quarterly work trends where work is going, to know that AI is important and we need to lead with it. So today's takeaway is really focused on, we know the usefulness of them and they're needed in our careers. And you'll see a framework where our careers have two different parts to them. And I put in small letters, and hopefully we'll be able to raise them to big sometime soon. We really need to describe the results from their use as we're using them. I'll give you a framework to think about how and in what way we look at this. I want to do a quick Slido poll, or if it's easier for you, you can just put it in the chat. How often do you use tools in your work? And I'm not defining what your work is right now. I just want to know what you think when you read this question. Quite often, occasionally, rarely, not at all, or not allowed to. There are some organizations that, many organizations have policies that are not very favorable towards that. So I will vote. I meant to get my vote in as well. Okay, great. And in the chat, occasionally, quite often, oh, that's great. And between 2 and 3. Oh, or my misnumbering. I must have added something. Anyway, thank you. So we've got people who are between occasionally and rarely, but we're inching up towards quite often. And in fact, I did this presentation right after the USAID firings. I did a version of this, a workshop, and I was surprised by the number of people there who said they're using it frequently. And these are at federal agencies or federal contractor agencies. All right, so here's what we're going to cover today. It's got another area than normally just 3. We're going to talk about AI is the help I need. And then what does AI really help with? Meaning, how and in what way are we using it? We're going on to, it's hidden, but it shouldn't be. I just want to make that provocative for what we're discussing. And we always end with, what should you do next? So let's get started with AI as the help I need. Here's what I've been hearing from people. Almost everybody I know is using it in some fashion. Like this: I can outsource all my job search work now to ChatGPT. Okay, maybe, but yeah, they do. The new LLMs can be taught to be me, and this is one of 2 LinkedIn posts I saw at the same time a couple months ago, where it said, here's how you tell it to write in your style. And we know a lot of people are saying, I don't have time to update my resume for every single job posting, so I let ChatGPT do it for me. I'm hoping I'm not inundating you with too many questions, but I want to get your idea. Give me one example in the chat of how you've used AI tools so far in any way, from finding a recipe for leftovers with what's in your fridge to curing cancer, whatever way you've used it. And let's see, how have I used it? I think I spelled that wrong. Yep, I did. Okay. Melanie uses Perplexity AI to fill gaps with health system assessment reports. I love that, Melanie. That's great. Peter says to help generate a participant feedback survey after a professional meeting. That's a great idea, too. I wrote synthesizing qualitative data. I can't type very well when I'm presenting, because I use that for people joining the course to try to get a sense of where the themes are of who is wanting to do what. Melanie uses hiringcoach.ai for initial cover letters using JD and resume. And Melanie, that's exactly right. You've just pointed out one of the important things. It should be our helper and not replace us, which is what many of the things I just went over are more replacement. And Sokna, welcome, Sokna. I used AI recently to refine my business idea. I love that. I'm thrilled. I haven't talked to you in a while, so that's good to know. Great. And Rupak says he's trying to get some ideas when he's just stuck. And that's also a great idea. It is great for ideation for sure. So when we talk about AI, if Sue, yeah, I clicked right. I think people don't separate out the two very different ways most of us are using it professionally. This means us individually. We aren't seeing as many people talk about how they're using it on the left, your work, your technical work in AI. And I put that on the left because that's where eventually, and people are predicting, we're going to be using it even more than we may have ideas for right now. And on the right is the work that we do in our career progress, looking for tailoring a resume, taking a resume and making a job posting and making a cover letter and things like that. That's your career versus your, what I call our technical work. So as we talk about getting a job or a promotion, I want to talk about that aspect when I talk about what does AI really help us with. Our resume is a resume. We are much more than our resume, but that's where it seems to stop when we say, oh, here's my resume. When you're applying, it's even harder. You have no human to talk to. When in actual fact, we're a resume, we're a cover letter, we're a LinkedIn profile, we're things we write, we're things we present, we're things we record, there's posters we give, all the ways we show our intellectual property and what we produced. So I would love to get from you in the chat or in Slido, which LLMs do you use, large language models, starting with the one you use most? And my example was Perplexity. I used that because I needed something that was relatively inexpensive last year when I had a whole lot of data to synthesize. And that was the one and I like how Perplexity handles things. And then I used ChatGPT a lot. Peter said he used help to write a report and consolidate qualitative feedback as well. I will not write in Slido since I've already put mine up there, or I could put it up again. ChatGPT is, Rupak uses that and then Perplexity. Priscilla said ChatGPT and Claude. Yes, I like Claude a lot. They all have the things that they do and don't like. And so now as we're finished through that part, I just want to remind you, a year ago, just about a year ago, we only had ChatGPT early version. This is from Year in Review. It starts in March of 2024. We only had Claude just coming out, and look at all the LLMs and the improvements in ChatGPT that have come along over this time. So our work is a quantum amount of work that we're able to do from a year ago when ChatGPT was very limited to a certain number of words and characters. I think you all are familiar with these. I'm just going to go through them quickly for one reason. ChatGPT, I know it has areas where it can store data on you, but I don't know if it's a paid version. All of mine that I'll show you are free except Perplexity. So what I see is things that I've asked it in the last 30 days. I can go back to it, but it's pretty linear for me. Claude, I like a lot. It's really good on meeting summaries. It's really good on when I give it an example to try to get, what do I want to say, blinded language about someone's experience. I can use Claude to help me do that really easily. And it gives me my recent chats as well. And Perplexity the same way. Now, I told you I pay for that. And because of that, on the bottom, it lets me choose different models. In Perplexity, I can say, oh, we'll use Claude's Sonnet model. I don't usually do those, but that's what it allows me to do. And Gemini, I keep forgetting about it, and I didn't even include Copilot in here because there's so many. Again, it's pretty linear. It lets me do things. Once I'm in it, I can update from there and do things. But all of these for me are pretty linear participation activities when I want help. I hope that you all have heard about this, but put a 1 in the chat if you've heard about Notebook LM and a 0 if you haven't heard about it yet. And I'll start. I have heard about it. Priscilla has, Deep Rupak has, Peter has not. Okay, great. A chance just to make sure we're all on the same page. About October or November, this is a Google product that came trailways. It wasn't out for enterprise use until October or so. I saw it in late November and started using it. For me, it's a game changer and it's free. And it really is, for me, the first way to build a portfolio view of what we do. And each portfolio, what I showed you before was the main screen. I have 5 portfolios already because I've made some for this kind of talk that I do. But this is the first one I did for myself. I put in my CV, my LinkedIn profile. It can take a variety of sources. And I put in some of my YouTube videos that I've done. And so what in the middle, it will immediately put something in there and summarize your profession. But the important thing is this becomes like a file folder. You can have up to 50 documents, and they don't say of any particular length in each portfolio. So you maximize this by being able to choose or not choose which sources you want it to use. So think about this as a file folder, a file cabinet of 50 documents. In this case, this was where I asked it to describe some of my key transferable skills and relate it to whichever position I held it in, just as an activity. And you can save everything. These are all the notes that I've done before, including some things for other people that I was doing. Why I stress about this is because, as I showed you when I said we're more than a resume, we have a variety of sources that begin to reinforce it. It's called Notebook, Notebook LM. It's a Google product. You can say google.notebook.lm, or I just write Notebook LM. It's the first thing that comes up. If you already have Gmail and a Gmail address and maybe Gmail calendar, it will say to you, oh, of course you can use it. You just have to open it and register for it. I think you have to register. I love it because I've been able to use it to give people, I'm working with someone who wanted to apply for a new CDC fellowship, or the first, it's being announced again this year when we thought it wouldn't be. And he had 3 different things he had to synthesize for 3 different fellowships. He was allowed to apply up to 3. And we were able to use this for some efficiencies in matching the different aspects of the fellowship. So let's talk about then, what does it mean to have the ability to have a portfolio look at yourself? This is just a very quick rubric. I just wanted to give you a way to follow through as I go through this. I call it defining yourself, describing yourself, but with AI help. You would figure yourself out, and all the examples I'm showing you today, I've had approval from people to use. So I used Rena's CV and I asked it to identify her strengths and in which jobs those strengths come from. Now, we can be very clear that most of what it gives us is pretty straightforward and maybe general. But when it starts to be able to relate it to the specific position she had or the specific accomplishment, that's where I feel all of these LLMs really help us. And then if she wanted to figure out, and she's in the process of this, so if she wanted to figure out what she wanted to do, I said, okay, now you know what she does. Find me 5 job titles that are based on her experience. And the job titles are on the left margin, but it says, oh, here she did this, also highlights this. Here she led steering committees like the ABC steering committee. As we've talked about all along, this helps us do the hard part or the not fun part of our work. Going towards transferable skills, this is where I'm finding a lot of help because it talks about transferable skills as if it's one skill, but it's really these categories of skills that we can see. And it described, again, not surprisingly, many of the things she has strengths in, but it talked about then the places that she's demonstrating those strengths. So if now you wanted to refine your work focus, and I've been using this with folks that are leaving global development because of the firings that have gone on in the US, I asked Perplexity then, Notebook LM is not good, even though it's a Google product. It doesn't go out and do the searches you want. But Perplexity, I said, give me 5 job postings that match her transferable skills. They were very reasonable, a reasonable list, meaning a good list. I didn't find a lot with it, except for the Kelly Services Office program and operations and engagement specialist. The Notebook LM helped me quickly analyze commonalities across multiple job postings. So I put in 10 job postings. There were several very senior and a couple mid-level to mid to senior, but all different types. You can see from the names of them: consultancies, project managers, data consultant, policy advocacy. And I got a great list of things that would help here. This just shows the first 2. It shows exactly which program's asking for what kind of thing. So if you're trying to figure out, or you're in a position where you found 5 different job postings you want to apply for and they're all due soon, this can help you identify where things are mentioned. And I like sometimes how Notebook LM will rephrase things. And similarly, transferable skills. Again, this is from this is from the jobs itself. So it will talk about the positions, but it always gives you a little bit of an introduction. Under communication, the ability to articulate information clearly and effectively, both in writing and orally. Makes sense. But I was thrilled to see I updated my jobs list of 10 to 15 or 16. And as always, I don't know if you find this, I find that depending on the day, ChatGPT will never replicate a format that they used before, even when I say use the format that I did 2 days ago. But in this case, they talked about transferable skills and they started breaking them down and saying which ones were where in the list. You can see it. Couldn't make it very large, but I wanted you to see over here. And then it also describes it also lists the specific jobs. And each of these little numbers here gives you a link directly to the job posting and the phrasing for it. So it does that for yourself. Let's see, Priscilla, you had used it. Do you have any examples that you can quickly unmute and tell us about how you used it before I go on to the next part?
I know that you can use it we're talking about Notebook.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can use it to make podcasts. And I
Oh,
have a lot of
yes.
PDF papers that are like 50 pages long that I need to read, but instead I can turn them into podcasts to listen to in the car.
That's amazing. I know it made podcasts. That's how I first learned about it. People were doing podcasts, but I never thought about making it do things that I want to listen to. That's great. Thank you for sharing that. That's wonderful. That's really interesting because the only way I can concentrate on papers I want to read or long articles, I really want them in my ears nowadays as opposed to reading them on paper. Thank you for sharing that. I want to go on to the other part, and I call it It's Hidden, but It Shouldn't Be, because it's an area we need to be paying attention to. So now I'm specifically interested in your technical work at your org. If they don't allow you to use it at all, and I know for a long time US government employees, many US government agencies weren't allowed to use it, but if you could just give me one example of how you've used it in your technical work, and I'll go ahead and put mine in the chat. Okay, Peter says he used it for writing a report introduction section. Oh yeah, that'd be really helpful. And writing executive summaries. Oh boy, I know. I know how to write long, not how to write short. I wish I'd had that. I have used it to identify transferable skills and then put them into different categories. Priscilla uses paid ChatGPT so you can summarize long papers. I'm very impressed that you read long papers from the National Bureau of Economic Research. Wow, that's amazing. Rupak uses them for writing intros and summaries. Great, thank you. That's wonderful. The reason that I am calling this hidden is because we are now going to talk about something. I'm using the word resume, meaning resume, cover letters, interviews. We're now at a point where we need to go to the other part of the framework, and that is how are we actually using it in our technical work in offices? And some of the stimulus for this came for me in the last 6 months of doing the quarterly updates on what's happening in work around the world. And that is reading how many companies are anticipating more revenue increases due to not necessarily fewer employees, but right sizing employees while using AI. And for several months, I've been encouraging people to start reflecting how and where are you using AI in your career work? And at the same time, being able to expand on this quickly because people have been writing about and talking about for 6 months or more the need to show digital fluency, they're calling it, using digital literacy and using digital literacy tools, and needing to show how facile you are with the work that you've done in AI. So we're going to talk about some questions that I get, and we're going to use a real example. This is a public health training example from a very good friend of mine, and this was some work that he did in teaching epidemiology in Micronesia and working with professionals, but they were students in the course on various actions. Now, this is his words. I'm giving you what I think he might have used it. I'm giving you what I think he may have used an LLM or AI, however we abbreviate it for. I was looking at this thinking, oh, I could get it to identify the top 5 diseases these epidemiologists deal with. And then I thought to myself, wow, that's an easy Google search. That's really easy. I can see these here, really good information. We know that Google's been giving an AI overview for a while. And I meant to take this out and I'm going to skip right past it. And then I thought to myself, okay, now that we have this list of diseases, oh, they're going to learn about calculation and use of statistics. Well, we need to figure out what diseases have what statistics and how do you calculate them. So again, I have no idea if this is what he taught, but this is what I'm thinking for it. So I took that list and I said to good old Perplexity, because Notebook LM isn't as facile on constructing tables, I'll tell you that. I said, identify and show the formula for one statistical calculation for each disease that public health professionals need to calculate for the disease. Please add it to the table it had already done. And it had already done a nice table. I asked it for incidence and prevalence, and it wrote the additional notes, which I thought was great. So then it inserted the second column from the right is where it inserted the statistical calculations, which made me happy that I'm not back in the middle of grad school right now. And I asked it to write 3 questions that class group work could use based on this information. And it did a great job, but they weren't boring questions. I just needed to know how could you really use them. So I said, okay, give me some options for small group exercises for 20 minutes. And it did a great job. I asked it to make sure they were culturally relevant to Micronesia, professionals especially. And the first one here, addressing the third question, which I thought was a great framing of it, dual burdens of disease. And this is a chronic disease and an infectious disease. And so it's having the group design a mind map and look at overlapping resources and where health systems, health workers training is. Boy, I'm not talking today. So again, I don't know if this is how this person used it. And I will tell you that I then took it to the step of, okay, now I've been saying for a few months in review meetings, I want you to think about how you're going to describe how you use AI if you're allowed to use it. What are you getting out of it? So here's an example. And I'm using terms we don't often see, like workflow, partly because I was reminded of this in something I was reading. And I looked at what is it that he was contributing to by teaching these people. So that was maximizing learning that the attendees were having by making sure what I called his preparatory workflow. These were just big terms for all the prep work he did, but incorporating digital literacy tools. And that includes, even though it's right now not well specified in most of the definitions, that includes the use of AI. So then I wrote his results: increased efficiency of developing the workshop. I know he didn't have to develop it, but I pretended he did, by 25%, or however you want to count it. But you can talk about the contribution you're making. Identified and delivered culturally relevant small group options that people then started using and told him they were great and wonderful and he should come back again. So I'm trying to give you a sense of, you're not going to say, I'm using AI to make my work go quicker, but that indeed is going to be some of it probably. But you're also going to be thinking about your ability to use digital literacy as a large bucket of what AI also is important about. We've become very used to digital literacy, and everybody on here is a digital native, meaning you've learned to use it along the way, having started with different things. As we wind up now, I want to ask you for a question. I went over some things quickly, and then we'll wind up with some answers to some more questions. But how will you use what you've learned so far today? I've talked about both your career focus and also the work you do in your career. I'm curious how you're going to take this forward, what you think has been helpful to look at. Wait while people are typing. Peter says, I want to try to, oops, I covered it up. I lost you, Peter. I want to try Notebook LM for making a portfolio. I think that's a huge game changer just because of the kinds of things that were 5, 10, 15 years in our career, we lose track of things. So that's great. I am I'm not going to implement this, but I am glad to know there's still some of you that haven't heard about Notebook LM, because I'm a happy evangelist of it in terms of the flexibility it gives us. So when we talk about digital literacy, some of the key areas beyond technology jobs that we see them is in education, in professional settings where we have to create, evaluate a lot of communication and communicate information and data. Most of us are doing some things like that. So I had someone also ask me, I'm not sure I should include this because they might question whether I'm an expert if I'm saying I'm using it. And another question, that what if their company doesn't have a policy to use AI and I said that I use it and benefited from it in my work? So these were the reasons not to include it. Sure, it can signal that the person's not an expert if they're using an LLM, but that's why I gave you the phrase digital literacy tools, because that rubric can cover a lot of information. And there is a wide variation in company policies on who's able to do those or not at work. And the person made the same comment that I've been looking at for the past 5 weeks, 6 weeks now. There are no job postings except one that came out the other day from Gates, but it had AI in the title. It wanted a senior program AI implementation or someone manager. I can't remember what exactly it was. But it's written in, all of these jobs are written in such a way that data visualizations, the ability to synthesize information for the same information for different audiences, all of these benefit by having the help we need in the large language models. Sokna's going to try to create a portfolio and create a post to share my knowledge with everybody on LinkedIn. Yay, Sokna, that's great. I'm thrilled to see that. Now I'm showing you something from, this is another slide from the December work trends. Hannah Morgan talks about people feeling overwhelmed in their work. Top left, people are the big change integrating AI into their work. And that might be more technology than those of us who are different kinds of knowledge workers. But the bottom left is showing you that not only 50% of the skills we have now are going to disappear or change in the next 5 years, 70% will now change because of AI innovations. This was from a report. I'm not sure how much this is aspirational language, but I thought it was useful for us to remind ourselves that, as we talked about in December with the changing nature of work, skills are going to change. What we're doing now we'll be doing differently. We may still have a skill of data analysis, but we may be outsourcing a lot of it to an AI model while we take the important part of needing to be there for critical thinking, critical decision making on what we say with the results. So why would you want to use this? I want to tell you that reasons you want it on your resume, in your cover letters, on your LinkedIn, in your interviews is every company's adopting it because they're all looking to increase revenue or cut costs by putting the not so much fun work onto AI, and then people can be hired or expanded roles to use use the results from AI in their, for example, research to then better communicate the results, for example. For you all, you can become stars, I think, if you're embracing it now. You can get ahead of most applicants by describing your results with it. And that's why I wrote the results I did. So at least I have one model there for you all to use. And it does help you stand out in different ways because as you use it more, you become more facile describing the things it can and can't do. For you, it puts you in the place of driving because when you write a prompt, you have to know what you're doing to write it. But then it shows the AI underneath. And a lot of people have been saying for over a year that the AI is the idea generator, the person who can do the not so much fun work of cleaning up an Excel list of Excel data tables, or just giving you synthesis and summaries. So back to digital literacy, this is a visual definition of it. And I circled both under evolving technology, but adaptability and digital fluency. This is where you need to start using these terms and can start using these terms going forward because all of us on here are digitally fluent, but we don't necessarily describe ourselves that way. In the meantime, here's how I'm going to ask you to increase your comfort. And that's by describing the work. Habituate yourself to it. You can start tracking all the work you do in which kinds of models and try to get a sense of, oh, these are the things I'm asking it to do. You can then identify synergies and efficiencies in the results that you get to take your work forward. For example, a simple thing might be, here's a list of data, please make an Excel table with the variables across the top and dates down the side. Think how long that might take you if you had to cut and paste it from different data sources, for example. We all remember the old tally book days, or some of us do. Also, you can begin to describe it in your own workflow as what return on investment are you getting? Are you saving 25% of the time that they asked that person to develop and give a workshop? If he saved 25% of his time for a 5 business days that they gave him, he would be making up more than a day that he would have to do other work to make sure that's really great. Or if he was lazy, he could just take the money do the 4 days of work and take the money for the fifth. I don't know which way he's going to go, but I can tell you when you have efficiencies that start saving you time or your ability to replicate and adapt, that will really help you a lot. So the takeaway again is they're useful and needed. And now we need to start describing the results from using them, not just from having them. So I knew we would run long. We often go 45 minutes on a topic like this. I wanted to know if anybody had any comments or questions.
Sue, I really liked what you said about how to describe that AI as creating efficiencies and a return on investment instead of just instead of just I had to use it to make a survey, like I said I did, but that I was able to do it more, write the reports more efficiently or things like that. I like that, and I think that's a really good way to include that. Thank you for that.
You're welcome. And related to that, Peter, is when you talked about writing things and doing things, the way that job looked to me is the person was doing it as maybe a consultant or longer term consultant, but still, if they say to you, what's your budget? How much could you do this for? If you want to shave a day off and you become more competitive because of that's your return on investment. So for any of you doing this, even if we're employees with a paid salary, think about if you can do 5 days of work in 4, then you've got more time to put into other work. Your boss will be happy and you'll be happy probably.
And I feel for some time I've had a response to that kind of question in for an interview if I was asked, have you ever used AI? And then I feel like I can really describe how it helped that efficiency, but I like the thought of being able to put that into the resume.
Great, good. I have notes, Peter, to add. We need to be putting it in LinkedIn, put it in our LinkedIn skills. And so I'm going to keep going
Yeah.
on with this. And thank you, Rupak. You said you learned a lot of new things. I think I was using it to do basic things. You probably were using it for a lot of times our basic needs are what we go. The minute I get an Excel error in Excel, I go to ChatGPT and say, troubleshoot this. I don't even try to do it myself anymore. It was a
Yeah.
very long formula, and I'm just beginning to write long formulas. So I know I probably made a mistake with a parenthesis. Yeah. But I appreciate everybody's time and attention. Any last questions or comments? I'm going to give you all pom-poms for coming and being here, interested in this, and those who are watching it in replay, interested in this and the opportunity to be out ahead of what I think other people are doing. I'm going to try, if I can, this week to write a LinkedIn post on this. I don't often write things that could be more controversial, but I think we need to get it out there and have a discussion because other people will be doing it too if they're not already. So on behalf of Ron, who usually closes the meeting, I'll say thank you very much. We are meeting next Monday, which may be a holiday for some of you. If you can't come, that's fine. I knew what we were doing and now I've totally forgotten. I want to say that's transferable skills, but I'll be sending out a longer periodic message. And I'm now going to include in the periodic updates one tool or one new learning that we've had over the month or two to help you all see more than just this is what Sue offers. And I'll probably start with Notebook LLM because I think it's such a game changer. Thanks, everyone. Take care. Thanks, Peter, for the help as co-host.